Part two, welcome. Part two of the previous video that I did for Wacky Wednesday, going into some little light language flow. If you haven't seen these videos, welcome and welcome back. If you have, my intention is unity and oneness in the highest levels of love light. For as we spin up the dust, so to speak, as we change our course of action, as we change our reaction, our reactor, our nuclear, our vision becomes clear, if you will. And all of the dust begins to settle and begins to be integrated into the system to be utilized. I'm seeing, I guess if you, like Bitcoin, I don't really know how it works, but not Bitcoin, crypto, if you mine for it, there's like dust. And so those remnants get picked up by miners, I think. And then those remnants get used and it adds to a value system. So I'm seeing that this is all connected. And all of the numbers that have been floating in the ethers, so to speak, all of those that have not made sense based on old geometric patterns and displays are now starting to trickle back in, drip, 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 back into certain mathematical quests, if you will, questionable pieces of information are being rebirthed, are being brought up, are being brought out of the, I'm seeing banks, I'm seeing like tombs are being brought up from the catacombs, right? Catacombs. And those that were unable to see before are now holding more charge. And so that which was floating around before their eyes that they were unable to see because they did not have eyes to see, they are now realizing the see that we are all existing within is communicating with us on a whole new scale. For within us is a space that we are all tapping into that was held at bay from one perspective or point of view. Play on words. Solar plexus. Just doing a little ujjayi breathing. For we have increased our capacity to hold charge. We have increased our capacity to share. I'm seeing Care Bears. Care Bears care. To share. To share. To share. Seeing share. I've talked about this before. If I could turn back time. It becomes a seamless interaction that has less need to justify certain components. For those components were kept apart from each other. And we start to take a step back and look and recognize that all of these components were interacting with each other the whole time. So I'm seeing somebody like cuts off a starfish or this is kind of going to sound mean, but let's say there's an animal that can grow back and they've chopped off the arm and put that arm under a cup. And so the animal is over here and the arm is under the cup, and they've been observing what happens to both things separate from one another. And then there's this quantum entanglement or spookiness that they can't quite figure out because everything is entangled. And so they've been observing it separate, even though all they had to do was lift the cup and it would have just melded back together and they could have observed the entire thing working together in unison. This is a representation of science coming together with some of the esoteric, with some of the, quantum physics kind of, and all of this Newtonian and Einstein all like merging and saying, okay, this was missing a huge chunk. But it's not just about taking the chunks and adding them slowly. It's like, whoa, okay, let's just take the lid off. And I'm hearing the lid is being blown off to take on a whole new proportion or value. For the chemistry sets that we have been using are no longer making the same charge. And I'm seeing that the air that they're, like, so for example, let's say you're working in a laboratory and you do this particular chemical equation and it works, but then all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore because the consistency with which in the product is being conducted, this is all play on words, so this conduction is different. So like the air is different, the plasma is different because it's interacting with each other in a completely different way. So some of the old equations don't hold up anymore. So rather than narrowing our scope, we do not lose our focus, yet we let go of the need to tunnel in, to only stare at one particular parcel of a product, if you will. This increases our productivity, and the old system does not know how to adjust to this. Therefore, the old system can no longer make the adjustments needed in order to keep up with this true fractal, for it has been fractionized, if you will. It has been fractionized, and it is so separate that there is no, the ability for it to go to see through the distortion is no longer part of the equation. So therefore, we must map into a completely different sector, if you will, sector or section that allows us to include all that has been ignored. So this is a play on words because it's really everything, not just science. It's political, social, economic, truth. Mama kuetin. And we recognize that many of the equations were scrambled. They were put into a mix in order to scramble and mix up the equations so that they could not be accessed. For if accessibility is available to all, then all would be able to access this higher realm. These are beyond my words of understanding at this moment. So I just have to let loose because I usually do this without recording on video. I usually just record it and I'm just going to play here. So welcome to Playtime. And so we fold more into the recipe. Therefore, I'm seeing bread expands out more. Therefore, the ingredients are more readily available, for more has been accepted into the fold. This is gray matter in the brain as well. For as we light up, as we light up all elements, for we are the elemental force. We are the charge. We are the force. We are lighting up the particles and elements that are carried within our nodes, within our brain, within our circuitry. And this in turn reflects back to us a new geometry, for we are essentially the production crew. I'm seeing projectors. And as we project this out into the soup that we are all playing within, the field responds back to us. I'm seeing cones in the eyes. And as we share this interaction, as we share this light, as we share this with the world, we are essentially sharing a new geometric encodement that releases all of the trapped particles, that releases all of the trapped, I'm hearing decay, and it allows it to be broken down For it was merely being looped back into a system meant to, I'm hearing two things, betray or keep us in this loop, but I'm hearing atreyu. It was meant to trap us into a certain story of indoctrination. For these patterns were being looped back into a network of regurgitation, if you will. Yet it was being used for an undesirable grid system that is no longer desired. It may have been desired at one point, but it's no longer desirable. And we have chosen this. We have made this decision. We have decided. And so as we decide and we begin to harness our true capabilities, we begin to break free from the harnesses that had kept us all enslaved. From one perspective, we say this with love. For in this enslavement, we have learned many valuable things. We have learned many valuable lessons, if you will. We have learned new ways to break free. We have learned new ways to interact and intermingle with each other. And we have learned new neurological pathways to pass on to our ancestors that we will recognize moving forward are no longer suitable for our highest expression. So therefore, they are now within us as a cellular memory and membrane that allows us to remember through the brain and also our cellular network that which it is we no longer choose. So I hope that made sense. I'm seeing so much, it's hard to put into words. Me mama kune o ti u ste wo wan kune ni mama wo te kune o ko na o ni o mo am ni ti. And we share with each other these new quandaries and calculations. We share with each other through our expression. This is a quantum field in which we are all actively interacting within. So those may feel as if they are playing small, yet they are necessary in this mirror, if you will, in this mirrored reflection. So I'm seeing that everybody's playing their role. So we don't have to be a scientist essentially to tap into this or to understand this. We don't have to understand it at all. It's all about this holding charge for this giant quantum space that we are all existing within. And as we let go of the need to compare and contrast that which it is we are experiencing and expressing in a way of, I'm seeing we can compare and contrast. That's fine, but not saying I should be like this or I should be like that. We can compare our experiences and share them and enjoy the contrast that it provides. I have to cough. And this is a play on words because contrast has something to do with photography. I've been writing about aperture. So this contrast allows us to see the shadow. It allows us to see the light. It allows us to see different angles and reflections. And I'm hearing it also helps us to compare and contrast contractual obligations somehow. Like we start to be able to choose which contracts we still feel obligated to fulfill. And it helps us to clear those that we are no longer obligated to fulfill and that we only thought that we had to. That's a big part of this as well. Mama ku ete. And so we are being introduced to new associations. We are associating ourselves with new introductions. We are recognizing and being introduced to different frames of quantum mechanics solutions. And this is also a play on words because we are being introduced to one another along this path. And this lights up our path, and we speak as within, so without. This lights up our path and activates us to such a higher potential that all that was trying to extract from us can no longer connect. It can no longer hold. I'm being shown, I've talked about this before, the scene from The Matrix, and when there's like, they do that sonic boom. I don't remember what it's called, but there's all those little spiders, and they do that explosion, and it essentially blasts them all with light, and they lose their, they can't hang on because it fries their senses. And I'm kind of being shown that, which I'll talk about in another video, that's what we're doing. We're frying out the old mainframe. We're frying out the old mechanics. It's like, nope, this does not compute. Nope, this does not compute. And we're rewiring from the inside out. And this is affecting our environment. This is affecting our interaction. And through this, we are introduced, play on words. I'm hearing introduced. So when we deduce something, oh, this is all a play on words. I could go so many different places with this. But when we're deduced, and I'm being guided to stop and play with this a little bit. Deuce is wild. So we're being introduced into new introductions, into new conversations, new relationships, new play dates, new mathematical equations, and then we can make new deductions from that. Like, oh, these numbers add up because this means that now. And that's the new way of it. This has always been the way of it, yet we have been stuck, so to speak, some of us in an old framework that did not allow for our greater expansibility, our greater expandability, our greater responsibility. This increases our ability to respond to the mechanical observations and quantum diversifications that are being added into the mainframe network. And we say these words because quantum computation is created from the human language system. So to share in this particular way of communication can be a helpful tool to understand what is going on a cellular level, what is going on a cosmic scale from one perspective. I'm being shown it makes it easier. Like if you're not an astrophysicist and you're not a quantum mechanic, you could look at computer language and it'd be like, oh, okay, I can kind of see how that fits. For it is all interconnected with one another. And we understand that for some, these particular terms are not interesting, and that is fine. We are being invited to pay attention to what rings true for our own ring. So again, that centripetal force, right? I always say that, centripetal. I'm seeing all of this like somebody's on a bicycle and they're choosing what path to take. They're like, I don't even want to go there. Okay, don't. But stop and smell the roses along the way, because that rose is that center of force that is essentially the inertia needed to move the bicycle. And it will feel less forced. It will actually feel less draining on the senses, for there will be a sense that we have missed something, that something is incomplete if we skip certain steps. For if it is that feeling of incompleteness causes us to linger or look back on things, and I'm seeing like look in the rearview mirror, look behind us more, try to figure out and pick up the pieces from what we've missed, when we could just pick them up along the way, and it'll help make the experience that much more richly embroidered. So we each weave a fabric of our reality, and the more that we add to it that is useful, the more information, not useless information, not information that isn't divinely orchestrated. And you guys, I'm being guided to talk about that a little bit, because this is whether you believe in a divine orchestration. What I'm being shown is we're divinely orchestrating this. We could say source. I like to refer to the energy, the spirit that moves in all things, as the Native Americans call it. Some may call it God, or we could just say it's us and our multidimensional versions of us existing in all time frames, even though time doesn't exist. Future us helping to give us little sprinkles in the past to say, hey, I know this is going to help you on your journey. This conversation that you're having with someone is really going to help you realize that you've got a friend. You've got a friend. That's been kind of a theme. Being shown. Mekua. I'm just holding this space for a moment. So I'm just kind of going to end on that note in this particular video because I wanted to share a little bit about my process when I'm doing this, when I'm in this flow. It's changing for me. So there used to be this and it changes. Some days it's like a very much a word play and it'll just be very quick and I'll just be in flow. But other times, this is an example of me slowing it down and dissecting it a little bit. And I'm not necessarily just dissecting it with logic, because sometimes I do that. My friend Kat's like, Carrie, you're in flow, and sometimes you stop, and I'm just like, no, keep going. And I do that. This flow's a little different though, because right now, it's almost like there's all these doors, and it's more seamless. It's less so it's different every day for me, and it's different based on the alignments that I keep hearing the word adaptability. What's being offered in this moment that's helping us adapt? So if, for example, we had this awesome connection with Sirius and the sun, so there's more codes from my DNA connection to Sirius that are coming through with my Earth. So it's like that is the charge. And that is different maybe than when we have a little boost from, let's say, another planetary system. And this is also elemental, it's galactic, it's everything. So I sometimes am guided to slow it down and play with the words and see where they fit into all of these different pieces of the puzzle. So when I talk about charge, it's like push and pull. It's movement, it's momentum, it's energy, it's light, right? And so I also hear charging ahead, like charging your battery, right? So we could go into many different areas with that one particular word. And I'm being shown that there are some things that I've already written that I need to combine with this particular flow to help it make more linear sense. Because oftentimes when we're connecting with our guidance team or our versions of us or the spirit that moves in all things, it can sometimes be, we get it through pictures, we might get it through words, we might get it through sound, we might get it through feeling, and there is a convergence of all of those things right now. So I'm still in the process all the time of differentiating exactly what the message was, not cutting off the leg and looking at it separately. How can I combine these frequencies so that I can see the whole message, the bigger picture, and not just use these particular words in a particular way? Because then it interacts with the living light codes that are all around us. It's a language, it's a communication, and that's just my style. Everybody's got their own thing, their own style. So part of why I do it this way is because this allows me to interact and intermingle with certain frequencies in a playful way, and also not to have to understand fully what it means. It's part of my journey is to trust. And everybody has, if there was one word that comes up for me the most, it's trust. For other people, it might be let go. That's one of mine too. For other people, it might be you are abundant. Some people, and this could be based on like the gene keys, like if you've had your gene key reading, I have friends that do that. Candace does it at Love Essence. I think I'll have to provide her link. And I just want to do a little plug in for all that because, and Alicia does it on Alicia Keys on Facebook and Instagram. I think and then Love Essence 144. Candace changes it sometimes. So Candace Co on Facebook, KO. And Alicia Keys on Facebook and Instagram. And then my friend Carrie Ann, Quirky Cosmo, does astrological readings and gene keys as well. And so all those tools can be really helpful and really interesting if you've never had your reading done. So there might be a common theme that's part of your mission here. And people think that missions are like, oh, okay, I have to do this. I have to save this person. Sometimes the mission is for us to experience trust. Sometimes the experience is for us to embody the divine feminine because we never did it in any of our other lifetimes, or we wanted to do it again. I mean, I could go into so many different places. Sometimes, and this is my own intuitive perspective, sometimes, and that's mapped into our birth charts and the I Ching and the living light codes of planets, alignments, when we were born, where we're at now, what our age is now, and where we're at, in our development. So it can be helpful for those of us looking for guidance. I also recently had an insight reading with my dear friend Jess at Yothera. So she and I do very similar work. Hers is a little bit more now, and mine's a little bit more in the future trip for people. But it was very helpful for me just to have some validation on some things I was receiving and to see it from her perspective. So that was really cool. Jess at Yothera, thank you, Jess. And thank you, Candace. Candace is always giving me insights through her knowledge of the gene keys and her intuition. So we all have these different things. For some people, the theme, we'll call it a theme rather than a mission, right? So my theme has been trust. Trust the information coming through. When you're in your heart space and you're in a place of receiving, but you're also in a place of gratitude, love, bliss, joy, it doesn't mean that's, I always say this, that doesn't mean that's what we're feeling all the time. We can trust what's coming through as relevant for something or for somebody on this journey is what I always get. For some people, that theme might be letting go of the past, right? We might have this, or letting go of the, it could be a lot of things. So inner child work, right? Somebody might just be very, very, very serious. And their mission, their theme is reclaiming the inner child. Now, all of those things can be all of our themes at certain stages of our lives, right? But for some of us, it's one particular that comes up over and over and over again. And I've had certain people tell me in session, well, that's my karma. And I really want to share on that note that if you believe that it is, then it is. This is what my guides have said. Yeah, if you believe that your karma is this, then you are creating that need to fulfill that. And that's okay. But it's also as easy, what I've been writing is it's easy as 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, I cancel, cure, delete, and remove and dissolve that contractual obligation. And see if that feels right. Does that feel empowering when you say that? Or do you feel like, oh, I still have some things I need to fulfill? But the more we hang on to that sometimes, or that concept that we are karmically obligated to be with this person to make some sort of resolution, that may not be true. We're making it real because we believe that it's our truth, right? So again, not being hung up on words there, but sometimes those themes are just themes for us to experience. Yes, sometimes they are a contract that we never fulfilled. But maybe we've already fulfilled it, but we're still hanging on to it because it was such a major part of our mission or theme, if that makes sense. And that's something else I've been guided to kind of talk about. So inviting ourselves to let go of the need to hang on to certain beliefs about our reality. And one of those realities is karma. And that's literally, that is a whole other video, because I know there's a lot of people out there going, well, we're resolving karma now, and that doesn't mean that's for everybody. I'm just talking about some people. So everybody's got a different thing going on in their diverse, unique blueprint here on earth. And this is part of what we're all discovering is, yes, everything is connected. Yes, everything is one. But our individual unique expression is why we're here. From one perspective. It's not the only reason, or maybe it is the only reason, right? What do we believe? What are we giving value to? What are we feeding? And I talked about this in, I think I talked about this in tomorrow's video. I was a little more serious in that video. Anyways, in love and light, guys, thank you so much for tuning in and sharing in this now moment, and just sharing in this time and space with one another and myself. And I honor you and I appreciate you, and thank you so much. Namaste.